Mythic Raiding doesn't work anymore. I've talked about Mythic Raid a lot. I've talked about how the lockout is so arbitrary and shitty and archaic. I've talked about how the difficulty is too ridiculous for 99.99% of players, which means that it's a stupid piece of content to have in the game. And I believe Mythic Heroic Raiding should be made a little bit more difficult. And that should be really the end game rating in terms of gear. And if Mythic Raiding is a thing, make it a race to world first thing, and then beyond that, it's just an aesthetic thing. It's a T-Mog thing, and that's about it. But let's see what Bellular has to say about why Mythic Raiding doesn't work anymore.
Welcome back to the show. So, there's a noise going around in a segment of the Warcraft community. The idea that Mythic Raiding is actually dying. This is a tone that's been around, and it's one
Why
that's
do I think so
very
many
much
people raided in Mythic? In Legion, a lot of people were just playing in Legion.
Gaming Guild, which were one of the fairly well-known...
Also, if you want to go back to Legion, you got to remember, too, your Legion artifact weapons or whatever, that shit never ended. So you could eventually empower... Everyone went God mode towards the end of Legion. That was uncapped. So people just kept buffing their weapon to a point where they just went God mode, and then the content became kind of easy to do. So that's why a lot of people raided at the end of that.
Known top-end Mythic guilds, as
well as a few
never-ending
buff that just kept going.
Even with that, I suspect that to many of you watching today, that's maybe a noise you haven't heard, because the reality is most people do not play
exactly.
Mythic.
Every week it was a stacking buff every week.
Of the 1%, or even the
Same with
1% of the 1%, the likes of Echo and Limit. But of course the thing is, if what works for them is barely working for them, and also for the top 200, and it's even worse for people who are not in the top 200, and loads of people are just writing the thing off, then that really is quite a problem for the game. Now, today's video was written by myself and also Dakor, who really led a lot of it. He is our resident cutting-edge Mythic Raider. He's been doing that absolutely for years, and, well, he's also had his guild disband. You've probably seen a number of YouTube videos pop up around this idea as well, often from pretty top-end people. As for me, well, I'm firmly a rung down in that ladder, you know, heroic. I got ahead of the curve, and that's kind of the goal ticked off.
I agree. That's how we do it here. I mean, when it comes to pug raiding, what we do on this stream, you can't really pug Mythic. We've tried it many times. First of all, you got the lockout issues, so people just don't want to pug. They'd rather run it with a group that they know is going to get deep, whereas pugging it is very risky for your lockout that week. So that, first of all, the lockout shit is bullshit. It's going to cause people just not to want to run it with randoms. And then you got the issue of the skill barrier, right? You have the issue of the skill barrier where really the fights just become so mechanically challenging and so punishing, and that if one person messes up, everybody's dead. That's frustrating for a guild, but for a pug, it's nearly impossible. Because one person makes a mistake, the raid disbands, boom, it's over. Your Mythic raiding is done for the day. It's just stupid. It's just stupid. So first of all, it's too difficult. Second of all, the lockout is dumb. And the sad part is the best gear in the game is locked behind this content. So if it was just an aesthetic thing, it would be fine. But it's not. It's the best gear in the game, which sucks. Honestly, getting AOTC with degenerate hours, your online is respectable. Yeah. Oh yeah, getting AOTC is fun. And, I mean, you can do it, with the degenerate hours we do, especially pugging from your chat, respectfully, thank you. Yeah, I mean, with the chat, that credit goes to the chat on that one, but see, that is puggable. Like, eventually, you can coordinate a pug well enough that you can get AOTC, which is good. That's how it should be. This is an MMO. It's nice when a massive group of players, the multiplayer aspect of it, comes together, and you can achieve something. But realistically, you cannot achieve what you need to in Mythic Raid with a massive group of players. It's not possible. Also, 20-player raid's dumb.
But even with that, I, and a lot of people like me, are feeling somewhat lost right now. You see, Aberrus and Emir Drasil Heroic, they're genuinely too easy for my raid team. But of course, for us, Mythic is totally closed off. We're happy with our group of friends. We don't really want to invest the extra time and effort into getting 10 people while also somehow still preserving the social circle that we enjoy, so Mythic 20 is just not feasible. So, we are in a position where normal and heroic raiding is more accessible than ever, but for many old heroic raiders, the game is just no longer tuned for them, no longer tuned for us. But the next rung up in the ladder itself is struggling majorly. That's happening in 4 big areas, and that's what we're going to break down today. Tuning, design, progression, and barriers. We went deep, we've spent days reading, learning, listening, and that's only possible because of today's sponsor.
Oh, there it is.
They're
there
an
it is.
online site.
Before we get into our sponsor for today, yes, outside raiding should be a fun social gathering. When I was raiding, it felt like a mob just flaming the lowest performer. Not fun. Well, that's what's going to happen. That is exacerbated in Mythic Raid, because the lowest performer in Mythic Raid is likely wiping the raid. Whereas in Heroic, you know, you got that guy who's just dying early in the fight. Most likely you're going to finish the fight anyways. It doesn't matter. So the raid doesn't get as angry at him. But Mythic Raiding, oh my god, forget about it. Because that one guy is wiping the raid most likely. He's wiping the raid. And yes, I agree. Raiding should be a fun social gathering event where you come together, and it doesn't have to be so easy that you just walk over the content. That's what normal can be. But for Heroic, it should be something that's accomplishable, right? Something that can be achieved by this group of players, giving it a couple attempts and getting it done. Not being stuck for hours on the same boss. That's just dumb as hell. But coming together, overcoming a challenge, that's exciting. Guess what's not exciting? Coming together and just wiping, being angry, fighting, and then disbanding, which is really what Mythic Raid experience is like. Samiccus is that guy. I am that guy. Yeah, 100%.
Builder
I'm
with
the
a
lowest
host
guy.
of tools to support your needs, be they a portfolio, online shop, or your email newsletter. Their award-winning templates are so easy to understand, and their tools make it a breeze to customize your site. And recently, their Fluid Engine and Blueprint features have made all of that even better. Fluid Engine lets you granularly place elements on your site, giving you far more customization while still keeping it easy to use.
Engine.
And Blueprint walks you through creating your own template, selecting site elements, style, fonts, colors, and ensuring that it's all nice and harmonious, so even with no design experience, anyone can make something cohesive, that's content forward, and that works across desktop, tablet, and mobile.
Nice.
Back when I had to put up a quick site for us doing job applications and want to host some info for our game, Squarespace is where I went immediately. Time is money, and they will get you something that looks great super fast. And the good news is that at squarespace.com/Bellular Gaming, you can sign up and you can build a website for free. And then, only when you're ready to send it live, you can use code Bellular Gaming to get 10% off an annual plan.
Awesome. Good. Squarespace.
This part of the story starts with Sepulchre of the First Ones, which was a truly wild time. Blizzard basically got things so wrong with difficulty and gear acquisition.
Oh my god. Hardest boss ever, man. Anduin is the hardest boss ever. We were stuck on him for weeks, pug raiding him on Heroic. 4 weeks. He had like about 5 or 6 one-shot mechanics. And what I will say is one-shot mechanics are shitty. They are. They just are shitty. If you got a, I prefer 40-man raid content. I wish they'd bring that back. And odds are someone's going to make a mistake. Now, you want to punish that person and kill him? Like if it's a single-player one-shot mechanic, I'm okay with that. But raid one-shot mechanics, where a one person wipes the entire raid by not doing a mechanic exactly how it's meant to be done, that's messed up. That's not a mechanic that's fun for anybody. Casual raiding guilds can still create that, but they are not incredibly common. I remember Heroic Pug during Dragon Soul fighting for the server first. Even back then, it was rough if you were at the top end. Lowest in the category was at risk for server flaming. Yeah, the good old days. Yeah. Yeah, no, the thing is, like, being a top-end guild is always going to be a bit stressful. That comes with the, you're playing the game in a competitive way. That's fine. But what shouldn't be stressful is the content in general. Like, Mythic Raiding is created intentionally to be stressful. To be stressful and basically impossible for majority of the players. And when I say majority, it is a massive majority of the players. Why would you be creating content that's only meant to be accessed by 0.001% of the population? That seems like a waste of dev time, to be honest with you. So it has to change. It has to change.
That the likes of Anduin and the Jailer became some
Pride,
of the
yeah.
most nerfed bosses in World of Warcraft's entire history. This is a situation that led to game director Ian Hazacosta saying this.
Honestly, why they created it's for Mythic. It's for the Race to World first. But the Race to World first can still be done. Just make it an aesthetic thing. That's it. Make it an aesthetic only thing, and the real gear drops from heroic.
Rather not have to nerf things 20 times for the rank 100, 1000, or 5000 guilds to be able to blaze that same trail afterwards. He was talking about those nerfs, and people thought that with him saying that, things would change. They have a little bit, but not that much. Yes, Tindral and Farak were not as bad, but they still required a lot of heavy nerfs.
Made the nerf
It's
the shit out
almost
of
as
them.
if Mythic has got its true race to world first difficulty, a mode for the top two.
Yeah, there's a tank in here who's fucking up. He's not catching the mushrooms at all. He's killing the raid. But what I will say is, yeah, every nerf means the fight was not well designed. If you got to nerf the shit out of a fight to make it killable, it wasn't well designed to begin with. Excuse me, is this what I think it is? What? What up, Leaky? Yeah, this Mythic Raiding. That's what this is. That's not good.
200, and then many nerfs later, the Mythic mode that most people are actually able to progress through. In an ideal world, these nerfs wouldn't be needed. Natural gear progression is the thing that ultimately is supposed to do that job, but in reality, it doesn't. What actually happens on the ground is that most guilds outside the very top end do rely on nerfs for progress. Yeah, they can run into a brick wall for countless hours before a nerf, but that isn't fun, and by this stage, they've been trained to expect the nerfs. Clearly then, Mythic difficulty is calibrated
I mean, that's it. You know that the race is only going to finish once the nerfs come in, which is dumb. That means the fights are just badly made.
The race and the rest are just left waiting for nerfs. That is something that
I think Halandras got nerfed like 36 times.
Faced this time round. Of course, what these nerfs are, though, are goalposts moving, and that's also a problem. We have this race first, majority of the player base second kind of approach that to many robs the satisfaction of earning a kill. Nobody likes it when the goalposts move. The experience of a boss going from a brick wall to a face roll is quite invalidating to people's progress. Your past efforts matter less.
It makes it not even fun once you finally get it. Man, is this guy using X Pearl or Z Pearl? Yeah, this is some old UI here. It makes it not even fun by the time you finally get the kill. At all. We finally got it because Blizzard nerfed it into the ground. Now it's a face roll. It takes away the validation of even getting the kill.
The kill was tampered with, and the nerfs often require brand new strategies, which, again, invalidates your progress and your prior efforts. Relearning a fight 200 pulls in ain't fun. Then there's the flip side, the guilds who actually do progress. Well, the challenge that they just overcame is then reduced, and if those players are motivated by ranking, if they care about ranking, that feels quite awful, and ranking does matter because Blizzard does support an official leaderboard. This stuff doesn't feel good. WoW's problem then is that Mythic is
It's an official leaderboard that basically gatekeeps the content from everybody else doing it cross-faction or cross-server. So, I mean, it's a big deal, that leaderboard.
Between the difficulty demands of the race and the difficulty demands of the
majority
of the player base.
You guys had it at 1% and they nerfed it?
That's
sad.
It doesn't seem to be growing. It's a difficulty mode that ultimately feels like it's made to cater to an unofficial esport and then later nerfed into a design that works for the top end of WoW's player base. Ultimately then, no matter what way you cut it, the situation with nerfs is not ideal and it shouldn't continue. It does, though, lead me to our final point on tuning. Okay, this is a smaller problem, but if it's fixed, it could rather counterintuitively actually make things worse. Let me explain. There is a mild increase in difficulty from bosses 1 through to 6, and then a massive jump up to Smolderon and beyond. Now, many would say that a more smooth difficulty curve would be ideal, right?
I
Something
agree.
about boiling frogs. But the problem is, if you smoothed out that difficulty curve, you'd probably end up making some of the first 6 bosses, well, harder. And as we've just covered with tuning, that actually might extend some of these problems to even more guilds.
Yeah, I mean, I would say definitely, like, it would be more soul-crushing if you're wiping to earlier bosses. That would be a problem for sure. But I would hope that wouldn't be the solution. If you're going to make the curve more linear and it just gradually gets more difficult, I would just hope they make the end boss less difficult. That's how I would say they should fix it, not making the first boss more difficult. That was how they should do it. Well, because as long as we get to 69%, that's, right, that's the master percentage.
Okay, we've talked about
get
tuning,
it to 69%.
That's not the only thing involved.
Races feel unpolished, I agree.
Design. Okay, design-wise, there's two major things I want to hit. Number one, instant wipes. Number two, private ores, because surprisingly, they haven't worked. First up, instant wipes. This is one
That's
of the
dumb.
larger problems in modern WoW. Instant wipes that are caused...
They're what I call one-shot mechanics. One-shot mechanics are stupid. They're stupid. Like I said, you want to make it a one-shot against a single player, that's fine. You eliminate that player because they messed something up, okay. But wiping the entire raid because one guy missed a mechanic by whatever, a second or something, it's just dumb. It's just dumb and extremely punishing for no reason.
by a single
It doesn't feel
player's
good.
slight mistake. Say, missing an interrupt ever so slightly, soaking an orb half a second too soon. Essentially, binary pass-fail mechanics where if one single
he's
person
dead.
fails, the entire group goes
At least somebody picked up the seed, because then that's another mechanic, right? He dies, he got one shot, and then the seed burns. Oh my god.
down. Now,
Talk about
yes,
punishing.
100% perfect play from everyone may be intended for the race. Is that best for the game, though?
No, it's
That's
not.
an interesting question.
Definitely not.
And it's one that we haven't
It also
answered.
creates a very toxic player base, right? Because everyone's going to get very angry at the guy who messed up. Whereas if he's just he's punishing himself and that he died in the fight, okay, that's fine. Maybe we can overcome it unless they're a healer or a tank. Okay, then, yeah, let the anger ensue. But punishing the entire raid for one person's mistake just creates a lot of toxicity. That's truly what it does.
Answer for directly from World of Warcraft's game director. This is what Ian had to say. When is it okay to wipe the raid instantly for a mistake? Honestly, the answer should be almost never. At least when it's more
Anduin
like
6
a single
times.
person's Twitch reaction mistake of you fail if you do a mechanic incorrectly or whatever.
Yeah. Even
Ian goes
worse, imagine a DC. Yeah, that's happened to us before. A DC that wipes the
on
raid.
to say, it's totally reasonable on Mythic to kill the player for making a mistake like that.
Exactly.
But he says, and this is the direct quote, to say the entire raid is over because someone was 1 yard out of position is not our aim. Okay, the point then is,
Okay, well, I mean, at
killing a
least he
player,
gets it.
fine. Wiping the whole team, that is not their aim. And that's the words of WoW's game director, who himself comes from a high-end raiding background. If
Right.
that is their aim,
Ian does.
Yggdrasil has not met it. Yggdrasil launched with 9 such mechanics. It's a pretty cut and dry topic, as is our next one. Private auras. Private auras were initially hailed as a solution to the weak aura problem, where weak auras would essentially automate very complex boss mechanics.
Right.
And the idea here is that anything protected by a private aura just can't be read by an add-on, and that means that weak auras wouldn't be able to do things like auto-assign player positions, timers, rolls, or anything like that. The
You know
context
why,
here-
in Stoutside, you say something interesting. I found mount farming more pleasantly social than Mythic Raiding. Yeah, mount farming is more fun because it's less punishing. I mean, yes, the odds of you getting the mount, like you're chasing the reward, right? The reward is the mount. Usually it has a low drop rate, so most likely you're not going to get it. But at the same time, you don't feel like you wasted your time when that mount doesn't drop because the process of getting it was enjoyable usually. Usually you're bringing a big rate of players, and okay, maybe you can wipe depending on how current the content is you're doing, but odds are it's pretty easy to do. It's a fun thing to do. You get a bunch of players together, you delete some bosses, maybe you get them out, maybe you don't. It was fun. Hey guys, see you later. Like that's fun content to do. It's not punishing. It doesn't take up hours of your time just doing the same shit over and over. It's something that you know if you put in a bit of time, it's going to get done. That's what's fun about it. Whereas Mythic Raiding is the complete opposite. You're getting a bunch of players together and you have no idea if you're going to be able to get this shit done. It's extremely punishing. You don't know if it's ever going to happen. And overall, it just creates a very bad experience. You think killing the boss would be also pleasant since it's a shared goal? Yeah, you would. You would think. But it's not pleasant if you've been deleted 346 times before you finally get the kill. No one's going to... And then it has to get nerfed 3 times before you finally get it, too. Just deletes all the fun out of it.
Here is
What
a
up, Baby
lot,
J?
but mostly Shadowlands for today's purposes. Especially in the Sepulchre of the First One's race, the weak auras got completely out of control. It had many mechanics that required excellent split-second reactive decision-making from multiple people at the same time.
Yeah.
If that didn't happen, there would be a wipe. Yeah, I think you can
Oh my god,
understand.
you guys remember the rune where you had to jump into the hole, and if somebody didn't jump in perfectly timed, they would either drop all the way down and die, or they wouldn't go far enough down and they would pop on the raid? Such a dumb mechanic, man. Who thought of that? What a stupid mechanic. And not to mention, I mean, this was punishing, but talking about weak auras, you literally had the damn, the Dreadlord fight, whatever, I forgot what it was called. You had to have the weak aura. It was like literally a requirement to be able to do the fight. You would ask people when you invite them, hey, do you have the weak aura? If you don't, here's the link, download it now, because you have to vote on the Among Us phase or we're all going to die. It was so, oh my God. It was so bad. How was that mechanic even supposed to be done without the weak aura? I don't get what Blizzard was thinking. Because then if you don't have the weak aura, you're forcing people to get into onto Discord or something and be able to talk, because there was no way that it was going to be done through chat. It's impossible. So you were essentially requiring outside use of something. I'd be fine with a mechanic if they included some kind of voting thing in the game, but they didn't. It was such, oh man, it was such a bad fight.
And the source of some of the Ian quotes we've talked about so far in the video. Anyway, with such punishing mechanics, it's no wonder that weak auras became extremely important to top-end guilds. The intent
it wasn't just top-end guilds, though. Everybody needed
solve this, but in reality, it just hasn't worked. You see, in many cases, private auras were applied to mechanics that were essentially impossible to do without some form of workaround. For examples, we've got Neltharion bombs, Smolderon orbs, and Farak orbs. Now, yes, the private aura means that it's impossible for an add-on to automatically tell people what to do. But do you know what private auras don't do? They don't stop players replicating that by just manually forwarding the information to weak auras via macro, which negates all of the private aura work with a single key press.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is, those macros could be secret. They could be rather brittle. So if you're a top guild that has got a dedicated weak auras development team, this stuff is actually better than fine. It's literally a competitive advantage because you have the resources to do a good workaround and other people won't. Those guilds below that level are essentially left waiting for Echo and Liquid to share their solutions. And because this stuff tends to be very complex and very custom, it's rarely a smooth experience where guilds are ending up spending large portions of raid nights just configuring weak aura packs, which is not fun. Now, yes,
totally
they could
immersion
simply not
breaking.
do this and try to do the fight normally, but if the mechanic feels wholly unreasonable to do without a weak aura, then the weak aura will feel like your only option. And this is rather well put by Saliathan, who put together a big old write-up for Raider.io on this issue. Here's the quote. When difficulty no longer comes from actively playing the game, but the juggling of third-party tools, something is amiss.
Yeah.
That absolutely is the case.
It's so, I mean, what an MMO boss fight is supposed to be is an adventure, right? You're supposed to feel like you're getting a group of heroes together to go kill this massive dragon that's been, storming about and killing all the people in this local village. Like, that's the immersion, the adventure. That's what's exciting about raiding, And if it becomes, well, actually, we got to get this app together and we got to configure it and get all this shit done outside of the game before we can ever kill that's just dumb. And it breaks the immersion. It takes the fantasy out of the game. It takes the fun out of the game. It just makes it feel like it's a calculator battle. Like, yeah, it's a programmer battle. Maybe programmers will enjoy that kind of fighting. But I think your average WoW player, no. There's nothing appealing about that.
And for an example, for Dakor's guild, they would spend multiple hours
Takes the fantasy out of it, just makes it a computational fight.
Across 20 players. Now, they raid for 2.5 hours a night, and that means that large portions of their raid time went into weak aura configurations.
Yeah,
and it's at this point that I would remind you that World of Warcraft is a game and a hobby. Maybe this is not what it should be. So between binary, white mechanics that hinge on a single player's reaction time and the ongoing issue with weak auras, Mythic is quite simply not hitting its design goals as stated by the developers and as felt by the players. Meanwhile, we then have all of the tuning issues happening on top of that. This is pretty rough, and it's happening to players who, to even show up, have got to go through quite a few hurdles.
Yeah. That's true.
Organization is a nightmare
in
three
There's
main
barriers to entry to wiping. Yeah. Oh, you think this wasn't fun? Don't forget, you got to do a bunch of shit to make sure you have the not fun. Yeah, you want to unlock the not fun content, you got to do a bunch of other shit.
Roster,
Just imagine.
comp, and time. Let's learn why. Starting with
I want to
roster.
play the game, not be
Mythic has
working.
always
Yeah,
had
with
a
weak
fixed
auras, raid
20-man
logs. Yep,
requirement,
exactly.
and that's inherently hard. If you look at other games like Final Fantasy XIV, we see that even in their hardest difficulties, they're moving away from large team sizes like that. So if your guild has only got a stable roster
Yeah, I don't
between
like
10
that.
to 15 players, you are simply out of luck. If that's your social circle and you would like to do hard content, World of Warcraft is not a game for you.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I want 40-man raids. I'll be completely honest. I want 40-man raids. And the thing is, yeah, okay, smaller guilds, oh, you won't be able to do it, but guess what? Guild-only runs won't matter if you don't have a stupid lockout for Mythic. It won't matter, because you could just fill in the raid with randos. And guess what? If it's less difficult, bringing randoms is less punishing. It's the difficulty. The difficulty is the main issue. It's not about 20-man or 10-man or 5-man raids. It's about you can't bring 40 people ever, and a 40-man raid just sounds completely outrageous because that's 40 chances for you to wipe if there's a one-shot mechanic. That's what the problem is. Eliminate the difficulty, make it a bit easier. If you want Mythic raiding, make it only, an aesthetic thing, but have raiding big raids. Big raids are fun. You know why the Hearthstone content and outdoor content, Legion Invasion, you know why that shit's fun? Because there's hundreds of people in the zone doing the content together. That's what an MMO is supposed to be. Not 5 guys fucking killing a dragon. That's stupid. You want to do a dungeon, that's fine. That's cool. There's a fantasy to that. But raiding is supposed to be big. It's supposed to be massive. Big bosses, big groups, big moments. That's what I want in a raid.
You either recruit more people, which risks
Yeah,
your
it's an epic spectacle. Exactly, 40-man is.
You abandon your guild to do mythic content somewhere else, or you give up and just stop at heroic mode. The problem with heroic, though, is that, as I'll note, it's not what it used to be. Razageth was a very satisfying kill for my own team.
Yeah,
Sarkareth
Razageth was
easier, less satisfying. Farak was an absolute pushover, which is insane.
Yeah, Razageth was probably the right amount of boss difficulty for heroic and for endgame. Like, Razageth, I think, is about as difficult as the game should ever get for raiding and for top-end gear. Razageth took a lot of progression from us, but it was very satisfying when we finally got it. It was. And it did need some nerfs, of course. But I would say that end product, the post-nerfs Razageth, was like the perfect, like that's what a difficulty for end game raiding in World of Warcraft should be. Yeah. RWF slash MDI killed WoW. Change my mind? I won't change your mind because you're right. Because you're right, Day. It did. The competitive, basically Blizzard trying to turn WoW into an esport is what killed high-end rating, for sure. It is. And it's what made Mythic Plus the bullshit that it became for a while. Now they're fixing Mythic Plus, getting rid of a lot of the stupid affixes and stuff. But overall, it was. The esports side of WoW is what killed it.
When he was
I spent half the site staring at Addison's ass.
For a guild like mine,
That sounds like a good time.
Farak Heroic is the end of the line. We're not going to split up. We don't want to recruit more people. And you might say, that's a you problem. And you're right, it is a me problem. But the thing is, if thousands of teams are in a similar position, then what in isolation is a me problem, well, that turns into a problem for WoW. On the other end of the scale, there is the problem of over-recruiting. If your attendance is close to 100%, which you would certainly hope for, then there will be people on the bench who just won't see any play and who wants to be stuck in the bench. Those people will eventually leave. 20 players is hard right now. WoW makes it even harder, and a key part of that is our next point, and that is composition. Just bring the player, not the class. Optimization only
I
matters
agree with this
for
too.
Race to World First guilds. That sounds like
Composition shouldn't matter that much. Of course, the composition requirements should basically be 2 tanks, enough healers, and DPS. That's it. That should be like the composition that matters. Of course, balancing maybe between the amount of melee or ranged you have, that could be a thing, but that's usually kind of balances itself out. Unless you're going for a damn Farak melee heroic weapon, and now we've got 99% of the raid is melee. But even that shouldn't be like a problem. It should just be like, okay, well, we got a lot of melee. All the melee have to do the melee mechanics correctly. That's about it. But otherwise, yeah, I really hate when you got to bring certain classes. I think that's dumb. And it also, if you got to bring certain classes, that means you're also leaving out certain classes. Yeah. Yeah, it's early dang, and what up, Susie? Yeah. Bring back scrolls to help cover class buffs again. Yeah, that's a great idea. I wish they would bring certain things, even summoning stones. Like make summoning stones a thing.
We have a realm
Thank you.
to destroy.
Thank you for the follow, Susie. Welcome to our Scourge. Make summon, like, don't require a warlock to be able to summon people into the raid. Make a summoning stone a purchasable thing or a creatable thing, whatever, a craftable thing. Make it something that people can just bring into raid. I just feel like there shouldn't be any reason to have to bring a certain class. Because when that class is lacking, it hurts the whole raid. Makes it less fun.
Reasonable thing to say, but it is missing context. It's implying the whole thing is a self-inflicted avoidable problem caused by sweaty raced world first players and the meta slaves who follow. The reality, though, is more like this.
Oh, it's the best
With
Lego
how
wielding
impactful
benchmark
raid
right
buffs
now.
are nowadays, there's almost no choice left in group comp. In some of the popular standard comps, there's like 5 free slots. 15 are pretty much rigid. Now,
Yeah, that sucks, especially when there's somebody that wants to come to raid, has the time. You know, their wife and kids are asleep. They finish the workday. Hey, I want to get on and raid. Oh, sorry, man, you can't join us. You're the wrong class. That's dumb. That's dumb. If you got a willing hero, right? It goes back to the fantasy. If you got a hero who's willing to pick up his axe and shield and join you in battle, that should be a badass moment where, like, yeah, come on, man. Let's go. We need you. Yeah, bring all the people. Everybody, every villager here who wants to come kill this dragon with us, join us. Let's go. That's so cool. That's what you want to see. You don't want to see, sorry, you got to stay here because we actually need the 0.3% buff from the guy over there. And actually there are no guys available, so we're just going to sit here and wait. Yeah, it does mentally affect you too, I'm sure. It makes people class change to a class they don't even want to play.
somebody shoot
It results
themselves
in them
the foot
unsubbing,
by
no doubt.
using a suboptimal comp for months of raid progression, especially with all of the difficulty stemming from tuning and design that we've already covered in this video. with
My son
Blizzard-
quit playing WoW years ago because of that attitude. He couldn't get into dungeons because he played what he wanted to play. Exactly. Horrible. Absolutely horrible. That is such shit. That somebody can't play the game the way they want to play the game because Blizzard has arbitrarily locked them out of content because they require something else in the raid. Bring back the mode through encounter design, tank path work, and slime goes crazy. Get slime unfused gear. Would love to level that level of immersion. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I wouldn't mind that. Yeah, good morning. What's up, guys? Look, the main thing is locking out content based on a class or a spec. That's just dumb. That is just dumb. And there's no... again, it's another immersion-breaking, fantasy-breaking part of the game.
You're literally needing to move the goalposts via nerfs to get guilds across
You gotta
the
bring
line.
tanks, you gotta
Now,
bring
this has
healers,
the
you gotta bring
knock-on
DPS. That
effect
should be it.
of gradually shrinking guild rosters. As comps become more rigid, that has impacts on your bench, and that's of course built around class buffs and utility. Less diversity of classes will mean fewer opportunities for players.
Well, nobody thinks the end game should be easier. I actually think they should make Heroic just a bit more difficult. I think Razageth, like I said, Razageth was the most difficult end boss in this game right now in Dragonflight, and that I think was actually a good Heroic boss. That was a nice end of Heroic boss, and that should be the end. You know why, Libor, why we think that Mythic difficulty giving the best gear in the game is bullshit? Because when the best gear in the game is only available to 0.0001% of your player base, there's something wrong. There's something wrong. It shouldn't be that way. I agree it shouldn't be 100% of the player base gets it. You should put in a little bit of time to get the best stuff in the game. But time doesn't matter with Mythic Raiding right now. You could put in every hour of your day, you could fucking put a feeding tube into your mouth, an IV into your arm, and only play the game, never get off your chair. Doesn't matter. If you don't have the right comp, the right people, the right timing, everything is perfect, and everybody else is also IVing into their arm, you're never going to get the kill. You're never going to get it done. The effort doesn't matter. The skill, it doesn't matter because you got to have 20 people with that same amount of skill locked out every week to do the same shit. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. That's not fun. It's so inaccessible that it's just not, it's not something that should get gear. That's how I see it. Mythic Plus will get you there easy. It's easy as fuck, yeah, but what if somebody wants to raid? Raid content is the true end game of the game, especially for anyone who's a lore freak or anything like that. Like, raiding is the end game. You should not have to do something else because Blizzard made the content in raiding stupidly difficult and nobody can get it done. I know why Sam thinks Mythic is that hard. It's not. Mythic Raiding? Mythic Raiding is very hard. That's why most people don't get it done. Sam, you don't play with guilds. That's what it's intended. Why? Well, then why are guilds breaking up? That's what this video is saying. The guilds are all breaking up because they can't do this shit anymore. Yeah. No, I don't think it should require a guild. Like I said, I think you should be able, fantasy, what? You walk into a village and you say, there is this dragon in this cave that has been terrorizing us for too long. Who's with me? Let's go kill it. And everybody picks up their shit and goes and kills the dragon. That's what it should be about. And that should give you the best shit in the game. A moment like that should give you the coolest shit in the game. That's how I see it. And maybe, I'm sure there are people out there who don't agree. But I would say 99.99% of people agree on this because they can't do Mythic Raiding.
To play what they enjoy, these smaller rosters with fixed feeling comps then means one big thing, and that is fragility. Fragility leads to frustration, it leads to inordinate pressure on players to actually turn up because rosters are getting smaller, and that leads to the dreaded thing of having to recruit people mid-tier, and this slowly kills guilds. It saps their energy. As Nascent recently shared in their community
the guilds aren't having
council
fun
thread,
either.
one that got a lot of traction, our roster has been forced to be so small that we often struggle to adapt because of how rigid we are being forced to operate. It is more difficult than ever to operate a Mythic Raiding guild. That is not good, and it's a hell of a lot to stick out given our next thing, time commitment. If you're doing Mythic, then cutting edge
I don't disagree with you, Libor, that there should be some content that's very difficult in the game. That's okay. That's okay. You want to make some content like this massive push for this top end, like you want to know life the game, here's what you can do. But it should not be the best gear in the game. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. The best gear in the game should be accessible to a majority of your high-end players. Right now, it's not that way. Right now, it's basically like, if you make this game your job, sure, then you can have this stuff. But if you're just a Joe Schmo out there who's only putting in a measly 20 hours a week into this game, you're never going to get the best shit. Too bad. Fuck off. That seems like just bad game creation.
Probably your goal. That's going to require between 2 and 4 days a week of maybe 4-hour-long play sessions.
Make it a transmog thing, and that's
about
about it.
2 to 4 months, right? At least 10 hours of raiding a week. But in addition to that, you're going to need as good gear as you can get. That means doing lots of Mythic Plus, especially front-loaded at the start of the season. So, over 10 hours a week of boss progress, then you've got your weekly keys, your pre-raid prep, your character prep, and then third-party tools like weak auras, cooldown spreadsheets, various add-ons, which all is a lot of work. Essentially, this...
No, but that's not true. Gear isn't a valid argument as long as you can still get it from Mythic Plus, can give you the best, which it does. No, that's not true, because then you're forcing people to do the other shit. There should be multiple ways to get, decent gear, and raiding should be the main way. Mythic Plus is an offshoot. It should not be the main way to play the game. Raiding is the end game of all MMOs. Raiding is the end game. You cannot kill the main protagonist, the main baddie in a game. That's like saying, the Avengers shouldn't be mad that they couldn't kill Thanos because they could have just, went and killed Loki 36 times every week, right? They can go kill Loki. Why aren't you going to be just as satisfied killing Loki? Why aren't you No. You want to kill Thanos. You want to kill the big bad, and you want to kill him at his biggest and baddest. That's what everybody wants to do in fantasy. That's what you want to do. And that's why raiding is always the end game. It's the true end game. Mythic Plus is a side thing. The socials in my guild can't even get you. Gear should be accessible just based on the fact that WoW is now seasonal. That is another thing, too. Yes, WoW is very seasonal now, whereas before it wasn't. Before, Judgment gear was the best gear in the game for a long time. Now it's every month it changes. Now every season it changes. So it should be accessible. I totally agree with that. That's another great point, Stoutside. Libor, there should be challenging things. I'm not saying there shouldn't be. And you should be rewarded for doing those challenging things. And you should be recognized for it. But making Mythic Raiding like a transmog thing or whatever it's going to be, and making Heroic a bit more difficult to still have a challenge in the game for regular people, that's the way to do it. Because if you have that transmog from doing the Mythic Raid, everybody recognizes you as somebody who doesn't touch grass, a no-lifer, and yet all of us want to be just like you because you're a badass with that cool transmog. That's fine. But making it, the best gear in the game, come on, man. Come on.
extracurricular work on top of the already demanding raid schedule that many teams have got to set in order to actually hit their goals, it is simply a recipe for burnout. Guildmasters and officers are just not finding it sustainable. And this is a theme you will see if you read almost any guild disbandment blog post. Gear then. This doesn't seem to be as major, but the very rare items and no deterministic way to get them can lead to frustration. It's one of those things where, well, yeah, getting a big, exciting bit of loot is fun, but if you get it by the time a raid is on farm and there's not that much else to do, well, is that fun? Is that exciting? Do you feel like you could actually use that new piece of gear? To many then, rather than something fun at the end of their journey, these end up feeling like a bit of a frustration, something that they would rather have a bit earlier so that they could enjoy putting those bits of loot to work while they are progressing.
Gotta win the role.
A lot of people in the Mythic community also speak of the dinar system that was added in Shadowlands Season 4, but as we already know, Blizzard considered it to be a bit too fast when it came to giving people, well, those key bits of loot like weapons and trinkets. To me, in looking at the big picture, I think gearing is in a far better position, really, than it's been in years. However, for Mythic, they're trying to do the hardest stuff, so any issues will kind of be exacerbated. I think that's what's going on there. Also, on the topic of legendaries, well, I think suffice to say, Dragonflight Legendary acquisition hasn't really gone down amazingly with the Mythic people either. I think on gearing there are problems, but they're not humongous ones. Some people would also say perhaps that the myth track stuff, you know, maybe a heroic raider shouldn't be able to get gear that is that.
It's always been seasonal. Mythic Plus is what caused them to call it seasonal. No, I mean, Mythic Plus came in Legion, so it wasn't always seasonal. No, it was expansional. Like before, in what's it called? Say in Wrath of the Lich King, you could start Wrath of the Lich King halfway through the expansion and gear progress through the entire expansion and be at, you know, the end game eventually and kill the Lich King or whatever at the end, right? All that gear was relevant through the entire expansion. It was not seasonal. There was nothing seasonal to it. It only became seasonal when they added Mythic Plus, because then every couple months they would change the gear and the Mythic Plus and all that shit, or up the item level. But like before, no, it was the entire expansion would eventually come out. Everything would have dropped. And then it became, okay, here's your progression path through this expansion. You got to do this raid, then this raid, then this raid. And then at the end, you get to the big bed at the end and you get the best gear and that's it. That's the whole expansion. Nothing changed throughout the expansion. The dungeons dropped the same shit from day one as they did at the last day of the expansion. It was the same progression path. It never changed. Whereas now it's like, here's your progression path for the next couple months. Cut. Okay, now we're upping the item level. Now we're going here. Now this is the new raid. This is the new season. This is the new progression path. Now, if you start the expansion today, you start on this new progression path. You don't start back here. And you end here. You don't end here because this hasn't come out yet. You end right here. This is your new progression path. This is the start and the finish line. And that keeps moving. Whereas the old expansions, the start and the finish line were the same throughout the whole expansion. Never changed. What were the item levels went up to in Wrath of the Lich King raids? But the item levels went up in Wrath of the Lich King. Yeah, when the raid dropped, yeah, you had an increase in item level, but the start line was still the same. There was no season. It was the same. If you made a new character in the middle of the expansion or at the end of the expansion or the beginning, you had to progress through the same path. It never changed. Yes, the finish line moves because it really, they were just unlocking new parts of the race. But it was one big race. Whereas now, the finish line and the start line move every season. It's different. Mythic Plus changed that.
I think there's a discussion around there, but overall to me, it seems that gearing is a issue, but it's certainly not the biggest one. With that said, let's actually talk about solutions here. Solutions, and I think there's good news here where the solutions do seem rather clear. I mean, you can nudge class design to have fewer fixed slots within a comp. Maybe consider dinars or something inspired by them as a system in the game. I know Blizzard are a bit scared of that, but I think in a very
Monarch, but we have players chew through content significantly quicker now. That's true. And that's why seasonality is fine. I'm not saying seasonality is a bad thing. I'm just saying if you're going to have seasonal content, make sure enough players can access that seasonal, like, you know, the stuff towards the end of the season before the next one starts. Right now, Mythic Raiding is not accessible throughout the entire season. Like, no matter how good you get, you're not going to be able to get to it before the season ends, and then the next season starts, and guess what? Now that old shit's worthless. I'm fine with seasonality in the game. You're right. It's because how good players have gotten. Seasonality is kind of required at this point. but that even more justifies lowering Mythic Raiding. Mythic Raiding should not be as difficult as it is, because it's only relevant for so long, then it's done.
Saturated landscape that I think is what the War Within is going to be, something like that could actually work. I'd also say consider
I agree.
maybe
The old
players
style
having
won't
some
work now.
control over that very rare loot. Maybe something cool could go on there. Then we've got the hard-to-stop design problems that have persisted from Sepulchre of the first ones through to now, even though interviews have acknowledged that those problems are problems and that the developers want to fix them. I think the solution there is pretty simple. Fix them. The developers said they know what the issue is, so I imagine that, well, can be done, right? That's all fine and clear. There is one larger structural change, however, that people are interested in, and that is Mythic 10. A 10-player version of Mythic. It's been talked about for a while, recently popping off on Twitter, Reddit, as well as YouTube content from some high-end players, and as well in dev interviews. Many people want it, and personally, I am one of them. Admittedly, though,
he wants it. I don't want it. I think you should just make it 40-man accessible, and that's the best way to do it. I want big raids. I don't want 10 guys. I want 40. I want 40 guys, big guys, coming in. Heroes of Azeroth to kill a giant dragon. Well, you won't change my mind on raid difficulty. Heroic gives you very close to the best. Why do you need the best? Because I want it, because it's the best. That's it. I want the biggest sword in the game. That's what I want. I want the best. And I think it's silly to have your devs making content that's inaccessible to such a massive part of your player base.
It totally is in my interest.
I want 40 guys,
Heroic,
exactly, Z-Core.
Is simply too easy for my guild.
More-
but we
more
don't
hairy-chested
want to
men
expand
all
and take
around
on
me.
the organizational work that would come with Mythic 20 rating. So for us, Mythic 10 means we get a perfect step up. We don't have to radically change how our guild is organized. It would be fantastic. Yet, you can still see that there could be some problems. A tightly designed encounter for 20 players, you can't just half that and expect it to work just fine for 10. Certainly fights like, say, back in the day, the council fight that was quite a bit harder in 10-player than 25 with the initial launch tuning of Throne of Thunder. That's one that I've got launch month memories of. So yes, you've got some design quibbles there. Even things like loot item...
Yeah, definitely. If they're going to make any change, like if they said today, how are we going to change Mythic? I would say first thing is get rid of the lockout. No doubt. Libor, yeah, I agree with that. You got to get rid of the lockout. Lockout's the worst thing about it right now. Not every group can make a 40-man raid. You could make a 40-man raid if it's not crazy difficult and there's no lockout. You just pull out from the public, too. You don't need it all from the guild if it's not crazy, if it's not impossible to do with randoms. Yeah. Scale the difficulty with 10, 20, 30, 40. I'd be okay with that. I don't, if you change the rewards, though, you're requiring 40, essentially, at that point. I'd be okay with them scaling it based on 10, 20, 30, 40. Not difficulty, but just scaling the health. You don't got to change the fight. You don't got to make things more punishing. Just scale the health. That's fine. Make it a 40-man raid, scale the health. The fight, gets deleted at the same time, essentially, but now you're in a 40-man raid.
level. I mean, would Mythic 10, in fact, be a middle ground between Heroic and Mythic 20? And Mythic 10 would be nice, but would it inherently fix some of the problem issues that we've had here? No, it wouldn't. If you still have those, one player makes a whoopsie, the whole raid explodes, if you still have those problems that the Mythic population is, that they're all thrilled about, well, Mythic 10 will certainly increase the Mythic population, but those problems may still persist. Blizzard seem to have been a bit more dismissive of the idea of Mythic 10. To be honest, though, I think it's probably time to give it a shot. I do think there's a clear option. You've got the likes of a Season 4 of an expansion. That would have been, obviously it's too late now, but that would have been a almost perfect time to do something like Mythic 10 as an experiment. Although, my mind does go to, say, Wrath of the Lich King. It also goes to the Siege of Orgrimmar. Both periods of time where World of Warcraft experimented with the format of its raids during an expansion. If they said, hey, for the first raid tier of the War Within, we're going to try Mythic 10. It'll have slightly worse gear than Mythic 20. We're going to give it a shot and see if it works. What would my response be to that? It would be pretty simple. Yeah, I'd acknowledge there could be issues, and it may not all go perfectly, or maybe even for some completely unforeseen reason, it could be a total disaster. But I would respect the effort, and I'd be down for the experimentation, because I think, if anything, that willingness to experiment and play just a little bit more fast and loose with things, I think that has yielded good results in terms of the core game design of World of Warcraft through Dragonflight. I'm very keen to see how that team...
I still don't want 10. I still don't want 10. But then think about the mechanics, would be very stale. Think about Smolderon. Yeah, well, that's the thing, though. If you're going to have 40-man raids, you got to design the fights with that in mind. You cannot have one lava pool per person in the raid for a 40-man. You'd cover the entire fucking platform, obviously. Yeah, you're right about that, Monarch. They would have to design the fights with the fact that, okay, 40 people can join this raid. We're going to have to think about how we want to do that. Maybe you only assign Monarch, if you want to do a Smolderon type of mechanic, you select 10 people in the raid, and that's the 10 people that get the spot. I mean, I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but you got to obviously design the fights with that in mind. You can't do it the way they do it right now. That would be freaking impossible to do Smolderon with 40 people.
Is able to make the game better through to the future, and hopefully the narrative side follows, but that's a little bit out of scope for today's video. Anyway, that's the discussion. I'd love to know what you think. If you're maybe somebody like me who is not finding the heroic rating as maybe as satisfying as it was when you were, say, killing Razageth, because man, that was a satisfying kill compared
was
to
fun.
Farak. But you don't want to do Mythic, like... would you
10
be
man would
interested
be a
in
big
Mythic
win.
10? I think, actually, if you would be, we should really get together and tell Blizzard.
What up, Far?
Who knows? Maybe there's some people at Blizzard that are just absolutely, dying to give Mythic 10 a shot, and maybe they'd feel a little bit better if they knew the community kind of had their back. Anyway, that's it for me. I hope you found this to be an interesting exploration of the issue. Thanks for watching, and I will see you again soon.
You actually matter in a 10-man raid. You have to carry your weight. I guess. I mean, I guess it depends on what kind of fantasy you're looking for in your MMO. Me personally, I like being part of a massive army. I've always enjoyed watching massive battles. Battle of the Three Armies. Lord of the Rings. I've always, to me, the most epic moments in Lord of the Rings have always been the massive battles, the huge fights. That's what I like. That's what I want to see. Yes, there is also some epicness to the Fellowship, right? That little tight band of highly specialized heroes that go out and do shit together. That's cool too. They're two different types of fantasies. But right now, you can live out that 10-man fantasy much more easily than you can live out the 40-man in World of Warcraft. So that's why I want my 40-man back. I want my big army. I want my big moments, my big epic moments. That's what I'm looking for. We'll see. Mythic Raiding's got a lot to be fixed. I don't know if they'll do it in the War Within. At least eliminating the lockout would be the first step in the right direction to me. That's the first thing they got to do.